a little bit as a preamble to further discussions, it just occurred to me, reflecting on what we have said and the approach we have taken and what we're developing. Some may think that this is a bit above the average mode of living. In other words, we are saying that we have to base our home on the principle that this is a holy home, this is a godly home, etc., whatever we discussed. And some people would say, well, this is fine and good if you're holy and godly, but if you are if you are human and worldly, that kind of you kind of lose the benefit of the whole talk. So there are 2 points which I want to make regarding this. Number one, just as, say, one grows up in a well-functioning family, in a so to speak, a basic religious and sound family situation, although you still have to learn things on your own. You can't act by duplicating it, by copying. Copying doesn't work in real life. You have to get to understand what you're doing and get a real feel for it. But it's very helpful to know what the ideal is, how it should be, and you know where to find the kinks, where to find what you're missing. We're learning Chassidus. Everybody here learns Chassidus to one degree or another. And some of the inyonim that we learn in Chassidus are extremely high and extremely far refined. As a matter of fact, many times in class, some people say, wow, how do you get to that? You know, and I explain to them, we are not learning this in view of where each individual is going to get to, because that is a little bit far-fetched. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. Tanya is a Sefer Shel Beinanim, the very basic book for Chassidus, and he explains that even to be a Beinani is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. And yet he also explains what a tzaddik is. So what's the point of speaking about a tzaddik if you can't even achieve being a Beinani? The answer is, it is extremely helpful to know what the ultimate truth is. If nothing else, it helps one it gives him the strength to rise. He recognizes that no matter where he will go, he is still within reality. He is not just imagining things. It's real. And there is even greater than that. And that alone justifies and actually requires this more profound learning. Similarly, in this situation, we may be speaking ideally at some point. And clearly we're speaking ideally not completely out of reach, but still it is a kind of speaking from an ideal perspective. We have to know what the ideal is. By knowing what the ideal is, we can always, so to speak, anchor ourselves against that ideal. And we can derive guidance and strength from it. It is infinitely more pleasant and more meaningful to derive direction from a perspective of an ideal than derive direction from a perspective of make-do, of adjustment. of adjusting to the situation, just make sure that it doesn't fall apart, that's a last resort. So this is one, I believe, very sound reason for discussing things on a Torah perspective, and then seeing where we may be having difficulty and where we need an extra help. But first and foremost, we have to know what the Torah perspective is. And the other, perhaps more practical point that we have to recognize is we live in a very precarious situation, in a time where the world changes every 5 minutes. They've discovered something else, and the whole perspective, the psychological perspective, and the whole human values perspective changes overnight. And these changes are presented with such conviction and such power that even the most astute can get lost. So maybe there's something to it. We know that Torah perspective has always developed and has been revealed to be able to counter the current onslaught from the outside. We know that Chassidus was revealed at the time when it was revealed, from something Baal Shem Tov and so forth, because at that very same time there was also tremendous approaches from the secular education, from secular studies, secular insights, and Chassidus is a means of putting these in perspective and being able to live in an ultra-modern world that presents a very clear modern view of the world. And yet, to face that down and to have a clear view, know that this is not a modern world, this is a godly world. And the only way to do that is with the background, with the basics, with the revelations of Hasidus. On top of that, or in further development of that, Hasidus itself is now not a novelty in the world. It is hundreds of years of development. Up until this time, where the Rebbe says that this is literally Mashiach's time. And just briefly, Mashiach's time means that things are coming to a climax. It's, so to speak, the bottom of the low is now being pitted against the highest of the high. And therefore, we have to know what the highest of the high is in order to be able to counter, in order to be able to go through the challenges of this epoch, of this period. The halacha is that one is forbidden to go to a secular court if it has a dispute. He has to go to a bezdin. And it says that if you go to a secular court, without the permission of the Bezdin, whatever the halacha is, but if you go to a secular court, even if the secular court would adjudicate this particular dispute in a similar fashion as the halacha would, you are transgressing on the principle of giving respect to a force, so to speak, to a basis that is and that is not Torah, and saying in effect that Torah does not provide that which I can get outside. If this is so halachically, this applies also in a certain fashion to all human pursuits and all human questions. This is not to say that one cannot partake of the services of a counselor or of a psychologist or psychiatrist. That's not the point. The point is, if one needs a counselor because one needs to answer certain specific questions, there's no problem with that. But if one needs a counselor in order to get a perspective on life, this is already saying that Torah is lacking basic information, which is not true. And for this reason, I say that although sometimes it may sound a little bit above the norm, the common norm, so to speak, the average, nevertheless, that's the point from which we start. And if we have difficulty to relate to it practically, then we have to find ways how we can relate to it practically. Before I get, I don't see a list of questions today. You do have. Before I get to the questions, as a matter of fact, I have one question that I left over last time. Okay. I want to pursue a little bit the line that we've developed previously and kind of take it a step further. Also on the basis of problems that were occasionally presented to me. The principle, just to reiterate briefly, the principle that we have developed here is that we must understand, this is imperative, that we have to recognize and understand that marriage is not source, not based on convenience or some kind of personal purposes. It's not a man-made concept. It's not our imagination that created it. It is a godly creation, just like anything else. Just like the individual person, the individual is clearly a godly creation. The family, the unit, is also a godly creation. As a matter of fact, as we discussed last time, it is clearly described right in the first day of creation, by the first days of in the first part of creation. And perhaps I'll go a little bit into the insight, into the reason, so to speak, on the human level. What does marriage really elicit? What is it? Where does it touch the human soul? We have discussed how one has to relate to it, how one has to cherish it, how one has to respect it. It's a godly gift and so forth. I'm going to go a little bit more defined and more and a little bit maybe deeper than just the surface. There is a clear distinction, a clear difference between the human being and everything else in the world. All other creatures, all other animals. Again, in today's world, in the secular world, these distinctions seem to be kind of lost, getting lost slowly. But these distinctions are very, very sharply defined in Torah. There is nothing in any place, in anything touching the arena of the human being from anything else. No matter how smart the animal is and how what kind of good natures it has and so forth. There's nothing touching the human being. Without going into lengthy discussions on this, just to put it in a nutshell, what in fact is a human being? Where is he distinguished? What is in fact different in the human consciousness from every other animal? The one simple nakuda is the human being, just like any other creature in the world, has an allotted time to live in this world. The difference is that every other animal has this allotted time to live, and that's it. That's all it has. This defines entirely its existence. The minute it's created to the minute that it ends its life. That completely defines its existence. The human being, although his existence in this world is also limited in terms of time, but the significance of his life, he does not live with the sense that I have these moments to live. He lives with the sense that every moment that he lives is actually representing infinity. His life is not for the purpose of continuing to live another moment, another hour. His life is for the purpose of representing an infinite meaning to life while he is living a finite life, quote unquote. When I say quote unquote, I mean the finite life in the human being really is just a very superficial view, but this is the way we see it from the world perspective. In other words, to a human being, to a Yidden, his life represents an infinite quality, not a finite quality. Just to go through life and to sustain himself and to make his life comfortable and pleasant, that is not meaningful to a human being. Certainly not to a Yidden. To him, every moment, or so to speak, every moment assists the other moment, but the general gist of his life is, what is the meaning? What am I living for? What am I accomplishing? What am I revealing in true terms, in infinite terms? A mitzvah, no matter what it is, this we cherish at the highest level. This we say, oh, this provides me with a meaning to my life. What's a mitzvah? It's also an action and a deed. Except that the mitzvah says, aha, it's like an action, but this action represents a godly will, a godly command. And therefore it has a totally different significance and totally different life to it. As I said, we'll have to just keep it, so to speak, to the point. Therefore, coming back to to the topic at hand. The Torah says, as we mentioned last time, that Vayikra Shmom Odom, that when was Odom actually called Odom, when did the human being acquire that lofty term, description that he is an Odom? When he was together with Chava, when there was Zochar and Keva, when there was a family unit. This is what defines him as an Odom. Which means that what does marriage mean to an individual? Marriage to an individual means that he is thereby acquiring a true and a real status in the world as a human being. He is acquiring a limitless and infinite quality to his life. And his life no longer consists a day-to-day existence, but his life now consists of reality. He has a real life, an infinite quality, even though it's superficially finite, but really it has an infinite quality. For those who are interested, Chassidus discusses these in Yonim very broadly, that the whole concept that there is a possibility, there is such a thing as a finite receptacle should actually represent infinity. And this is what happens to the human being. Only through marriage. Therefore, coming back to the relationship between the husband and the wife, the relationship, therefore, is no longer a relationship between one individual and another. This is a relationship that each recognizes that the spouse is part of the true existence, the true value of this unit, of this life. As I touch the real question that I want to get to, I will elaborate a little bit more on this. I want to kind of keep to the topic. The question that I want to discuss is the difficulty that sometimes arises from comparing, so to speak, where the wife or the husband or either direction kind of judges what is the husband doing and what is the wife doing. Like we discussed last time, whose job is more important and whose job is more significant and so forth. As it can happen, and it happens, where the wife would say that, say on a very simple level, the husband has shiurim, he goes out to learn, and I'm stuck home with the kids. So, just as an aside, clearly the shiurim and being stuck with the kids has to be coordinated in such a way that it isn't, so to speak, creating too much pressure that cannot be borne. But under normal circumstances, this is quite a possibility, even in a normal situation where there is no overbearing pressure. But the wife says, why should he go to the class? Why is he going to the class of learning and I'm stuck with the kids? Just as an example. I want to take this in perspective and we'll see where this is leading. When the husband goes out to the shiur, this husband who is now married, and this marriage has now redefined his individual perspective. Before marriage, he was a man and she was a woman. After marriage, he is the husband and she is the wife. It completely redefined their even separate and individual personal definitions. Which means that prior to marriage, when he went to learn for personal enhancement, for personal reasons. After marriage, when he goes to learn because marriage, family requires that there is learning happening in the family. It is no longer a personal experience. It's no longer for his individual growth and individual satisfaction. Because he now perceives himself in a totally different view. And I want to tell you, the fact is that bochim learn, girls learn, and they become lomdim and lamdonis and so forth. There is no comparison to the insight and the depth that one acquires in learning after that one establishes a home and has this sense of family responsibility. His mind opens up. As we said last week, or 2 weeks ago, that marriage is something that can elevate a person to the highest grade, to the highest heights. His whole approach to learning is no longer simply a mental exercise, a mental challenge. He's looking for the real message in what he's learning. What does it really mean? And how do I bring it down, so to speak, bring it into my home? So that, true, he goes to learn, but he's going to learn, he's not leaving his family behind, he's taking his family with him. Or at least, he should take his family with him. Because that's what it means, to be a family person. In a similar fashion, on the other side, when you say, I'm stuck with the kids, again, everything has to be taken, so to speak, in perspective. And I mentioned last time that clearly when the mother needs help, the husband has to be there to help her. We're not talking about neglect and saying, no, this is your job and I have nothing to do with it. We're talking just on the level of saying that he has other interests, whereas I don't have other interests. And I'm explaining that the Rebbe used to says that what greater joy is there in raising a child? This is a special quality that Hashem has bestowed on a mother, the ability to raise a child. So, both sides of this statement, he is going out to his interests, and I'm stuck with the kids. Both sides, both statements are incorrect. He is not going out to his interests, and she is not stuck with the kids. He is, as I said, filling in and bringing into the family the light that he has to bring in, and she is raising a healthy family. And for a third time, I'm reiterating, it doesn't mean to the extreme, it doesn't mean that this is just a division of labor. This simply means that these are the qualities that Rebbe has bestowed upon each of them and giving them the responsibility for it. It's their privilege. And surely everybody needs a break and everybody needs a respite from the load that they have. Last time, there was a question that I needed some time to reflect on, how to present it and how to approach it. It's quite a sensitive issue. And I decided that I can't ignore it. I have to discuss it if it's a problem. And hopefully we'll succeed in getting a proper perspective on this issue. People have their frailties. As we mentioned before, the Alter Rebbe says that to be a Beinoni is a very far-fetched hope. Halavai Beinoni, he says, for all the great people that he is talking to and through all the generations, to be a Beinoni is a very, very difficult level to attain. Which means that if you're not a Beinoni, what then are we? The unmentionable. What does that mean? And the Alter Rebbe says very clearly, it means that one can be davening, and one can be learning, and doing it all very sincerely, and the minute he closes his siddur and takes off his tefillin and goes out to work and goes out into the street, who knows what's going to attack him? And then he has to use all that he's got to fight off those attacks. This is the reality into which we were put. And again, the Tanya explains clearly why that reality is as it is and what's accomplished by it. This is not just a weakness that we create. This is not of our choice. This is the way the Rebbe wanted it, so that we fight it at the level where we fight it. In this arena, there are two parts. There is the Benodam Lamokim and there's Benodam Lachaveiri. Meaning, there is, as I said, benodam lamokim between man and God. That he was davening, and all of a sudden he forgot completely where he was before, at what level, what his insights were, and all of a sudden he's looking at the world and he sees world. And he has to keep his equilibrium and keep his mind and his octus focused and derive strength from some kind of an inner arsenal to be able to overcome what is being thrown at him. This is benodam lamok. Then there is benodam lachaveiri. Benodam lachaveiri is between the man and his wife. If the challenges are being thrown at the man, and he feels that this is a challenge and he has to fight it, does that mean that he is thereby, so to speak, being showing that he is less than fully related and fully committed to his married life? That he is not, that he's got something else can possibly attack him. And the answer is drawn exactly from what we have discussed. The marriage to the man and to the woman does not mean merely that he is attracted to her and she's attracted to him. It means that she is his wife for life. She is the one that complements him, that makes him into a human being. And vice versa is also true. So therefore, his commitment, so to speak, his relationship to his wife is not at all challenged by whatever the world can throw at him. Because that's not what it's based on. This is a challenge which the Rebbe put to him, because the world has to be, so to speak, nizbare, for those who know this terminology, has to be purified at its place. And that's why we have to go through it and be mavara the world wherever it is. But it's not a challenge. It's not something that puts their relationship in question, because that's not what their relationship consists of. This is not the basis for their relationship. And I'm hoping, this is, as I said, it's a sensitive issue which really was, kind of hesitating altogether bringing up, but I decided that if it's a problem, it has to be somehow put in perspective. And hopefully this will be sufficient, simply that we all have to know that everyone is challenged in this world. Everyone is challenged in this life, in one way or another. And you have to know, we have to give each other the benefit of the doubt, although there is absolutely no doubt. We give each other the benefit of utilizing, that each one will utilize their inner strength to overcome their challenges. But we have to know that this is absolutely no challenge to the marriage at all. That's nothing to do with their relationship. Because their relationship is not based on these meaningless challenges, superficial things. Okay. All right. Question number 1. How do we properly understand the pasuk from Bereshis? He will rule over his wife. It's a pasuk in the Torah. The concept of ruling in the Jewish home does not at all relate to the common interpretation of this term of he will rule. Just like, for instance, your boss rules over his employees and tells them what to do. And they have to do what he wants them to do, whether they like it or not, whether they agree with him or not. The concept of rule, actually, we have to some degree discussed it in the first session, maybe some in the second session, where we discussed the different contributions, the different parts that the husband and the wife could bring into the home, into this family unit. The husband's job, and as I say again, it's his job, which meaning it's his responsibility to provide a course, to provide a direction, to provide an overview for this unit, for the home. And I discussed then, and I would urge you to try to listen to it, that the basic concept of an overview is the capability of foreseeing, of sighting a direction at a distance before you get to it. Everyone can identify a building once it's standing and built. But to conceptualize a building, to conceptualize it in a certain, in a certain setting, in a certain area, for that you need a special trained person to be able to project what this building is going to contribute, how it's going to fit into this situation. This projection all now there are in construction of a building, there are the bricklayers, there are the masons, whatever it is, and then there are the engineers, and then there's the architect. And the architect's job, to a great degree, is much less related to the actual building than anyone else. But he has to be the first one to touch it. Why can't a good bricklayer say, okay, the lay bricks and the building is going to stand? And the answer is, this is never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Because the bricklayer only knows how bricks are laid. He doesn't have, he cannot project whether we should lay the bricks this way or should lay them this way, or in what direction we should go. This is something which can only be done by someone who is trained in being able to view the final product before it's even begun. Because before it was started. This it is the man's responsibility to provide direction for the home. And I don't mean direction by saying, this is how we're going to do it, this is where we're going to go. No. Direction means an overview. Something that sets goals and sets values. Everything else falls in place, as a result of that overview. Give me an example to illustrate it in a practical sense. Everyone wants a happy home. That's a pleasant thing to experience. Not everyone recognizes that a happy home consists of not only the fact that there is food on the table, there is clothes in the wardrobe, and that everyone is Baruch Hashem healthy. A happy home, in a more subtle, but overall and above all, is a home where everyone recognizes and feels that there is significance to this home. This home stands for something. This home stands for for goodness. This home stands for Hasidus. This home stands for scholarship. Whatever it is, every home is a little different. Every home is a little different. But every home has to have an underlying quality that it's striving to. It's not striving just to exist. This strive is very subtle, because in every home there is learning, in every home there is zokeh, in every home there is hachmas on good deeds and so forth. But what is the central point? What is the underpinning? What is the central chayas that's in it? That has to be provided by the husband. He has to have a sense of where we're going. The reason that he has to do that, and not the wife, as we said last time, that there is no sin if the wife helps her husband and the husband helps his wife. The point is that if the wife helps her husband, she is helping him, and if he helps her, he is helping her. She's not replacing him, she's not taking his position, she is helping him. And surely the wife takes a very central, like the Abba always used to say, very central place in helping and encouraging her husband to do his thing. But the thing nevertheless has to be his. And the reason for that is that effectively it is his responsibility by the Torah to have a family. Therefore he has to provide the basics, the basic strength and direction and value of the family. Because the responsibility to have the family is really on him much more than on her. The fact is that in a family where the man makes an effort to fill, so to speak, the role of the man and to give direction and an insight that he's supposed to give, there is a totally different brightness, totally different chayas in this home. Because this chayas is not limited to what has already been accomplished. There is always some kind of an outlook. Where do we go further? There is no end, so to speak, to their goal, because it's a constantly developing goal. It's not like you're saying, okay, I want to provide so that we won't have to worry about next month's rent. Okay, so that's the end of the goal. That's not that's not what how the family lives. This is not the highest of the family. The highest of the family is not dependent on the absence of problems. The highest of the family is supplied by the direction and by the endless pursuit of the value that the family stands for. This is what gives it highest. Everybody, I'm sure, had seen one way or another where the Rebbe, there's a very famous little excerpt of the Dallas video, where somebody comes to the Rebbe and he says that he has he represents an organization, I don't recall exactly what it was, and that they have decided to give the Chabad X number of dollars, a pretty sizable sum. So the Rebbe turns to him and says, and you expect me to be satisfied with that? This was such an obvious thing, Mamred. It never meant, the Rebbe was very happy, so to speak. The Rebbe recognized what the Shluchim were doing, what everybody is doing. The Rebbe appreciated every little child, everyone. But at the very same moment when he appreciated, that very same moment he immediately said, what's next? Where do we go now? Thus, this is the meaning of a living home. Of a home that is not limited to a prescribed so to speak, an existential, immediate situation. Life, no matter how many years a person has, if it's 120, if it's infinite, there's always going to be something to strive for. That's what a living home is. The Hu Yim Shel Boch essentially represents this concept. There is an interesting passage actually in last week's Sedra, and we should take our cue from that. Yankov stole the brachas from Esav. Esav came to Yitzchak and he screamed bloody murder. And he begged his father Yitzchak and he said, is that all? Does that mean you have no bracha from me? You have to give me also something. So Yitzchak says to him, you're going to have good land, etc., etc., etc. But then he said something to him from which we should learn. And he said, Kasher Torid v'raktu ulemi al tzavorecha. That when you will notice that Yankiv is not living up to his level, to his purposes, to his responsibility, then you can throw off your yoke. Then you can throw his yoke off you. You have to understand this. The home is supposed to be, and it should be, and it will be, and must be, the way the Torah describes it. The man has to, quote-unquote, rule, meaning he has to provide the highest, he has to provide the direction, he has to provide the meaning to the life, to the home. What happens when he doesn't? Kasher Torit. Has v'sholem, everything falls apart. And we turn around and we start saying, what's happening? What went wrong in the home? What went wrong? Why are we fighting? Why are we at each other's throats? Why can't we communicate? Why does everyone feel that everyone else is breathing on his toes? Nobody has room for the other. And the answer is that this is a ship that lost its direction. It's going in circles. And a ship that's going in circles, everybody gets tired of everybody else. And this is the point. It's a message to both effectively. The responsibility of the husband and the recognition on the part of the wife that she should understand that this ship must have a captain because he has to go someplace. She must make sure, she must help and encourage the captain to hold the rudder and lead it. If she feels that he is not getting enough of resources to give guidance to the ship, she must encourage him and say, I'll take care of this. You can go to the class. You go and speak to your mashpia. You go and learn. I need that more than your help now. Because this is more important for our lives. All too often we turn around, there is a problem, and we think, oh, if I put this screw in, if I put this candy in, that will solve the problem. It doesn't. You have to, a problem in a home has to be solved just like Chas v'sholom, a person has a headache, a person has Chas v'sholom something with his heart. You have to know where the problem is. By removing the immediate pain, you're not solving the problem. You're camouflaging it, you're covering it up, but you don't know where it's going to show up. Chas v'sholom in a more severe way. You have to go down to the heart of the problem. And all too often, the heart of the problem is that, I said, there is no light, there is no chayas, and there is no chayas. A lifeless body, so to speak, in a allegorical form, no matter how well fed it is, has no strength. Has no strength. Feeding food does not give strength to the body unless it has spirit. So I thank you for the question. I hope that this is clear. And if it's not, I just want to limit how much time I spend on the question. But if it's not, it's very important that we get a clear picture of this. This is not a question of him ruling her, her ruling him. It's a question of what is a Jewish home, what's the structure of a Jewish home? Where does it get its chayas? Where does it get its food? How is everything coordinated? Okay. There's a lot of questions here about mashpia. Just want to briefly discuss this whole Indian, and hopefully it will cover all the questions. It's my feeling that a mashpia, as it was in, so to speak, throughout the Jewish history, there was always a rov, there was always someone in the little community to whom people related. A mashpia is not merely to answer a question or to arbitrate a dispute. A mashpia is someone with whom you come in contact on a regular basis. You attend classes, you attend Verbrengings, you sit around and talk. During these interchanges, you get insights, you get perspectives. Besides that, during these interchanges, the mashpia, whoever it is able to get an insight into you, get a closeness, get a close-up understanding. When a person comes and presents a problem, you can't answer the problem on the basis of a problem. You have to know who is asking it. And the same problem presented by two different people will absolutely get two different answers. So that in terms of, that's one of the questions, how often and so forth, a mashpia is, if you, there definitely must be a mashpia. With someone that you can relate to and someone that kind of leads and gives you guidance in life. How often do you relate to him? On a constant basis. You may be davening together, you may be Verbreng together, you, as I said, you attend classes. You try to expose yourself to the mashpia, and you try to be exposed to the mashpia as much as possible. That way, you don't live in a vacuum, so to speak, and groping in the dark. This has been, as I said, this has been in the Jewish tradition throughout the ages. In every little community, there was the Rav, it was the Maggid Shir, whoever it was. There was always someone that you can discuss things, someone that knew the people in the community. That way, you can have a real relationship, and that way you can get guidance that is pertinent and meaningful to the individual. What if a couple has a machlokes about halacha? Well, a machlokes about halacha, she is a rav and he is a rav. He passes differently than she does. What does it mean, machlokes about halacha? I'll tell you the truth. I mean, halacha is the easiest thing, I think, to verify. You go to a rav and find out what the halacha is. Perhaps the message between the lines is not a dispute about halacha per se. It's a dispute that having a difficulty where one is not quite ready to follow halacha the way the Rav says it should be followed. This kind of difficulty. which can happen. The first thing that would encourage and enable a couple, a family, to follow halacha and follow bichlal, and to a Jewish path in life, is to be associated with someone, to be associated with a Rav, associated with a mashpia, to be part of a community. We have the tendency, it's an American invention, where everyone is an individual, and one lives in his little island. You have communities in Long Island or in some other far-fetched, in some communities where the distance between one home and another is really like close to half a mile. And people say, oh, it's great, I'm living mamash on my island. The Rambam says that human beings were created to be social, to interacting with other human beings. When people hide away in these homes and all they have is their immediate family and a few dogs, and that's their company, from time to time they throw a big party and entertain, and everybody knows they're wealthy and they know how to throw a party. People have to interact. People have to be part of the community. Be part of the community, first of all, as I said, you have a mashpia automatically. And that in itself rubs off. It encourages you to live up to a certain standard. You're not alone. So therefore, I would think that this would be if you have a specific question, it's one thing. But if you talk in terms of long term, how do we assure ourselves that we will maintain a standard of halacha in the house, and we will actually, so to speak, increase and improve on it on a constant basis? That is through interaction and through having and through being part of the community. It may be a difficulty. I'm just suggesting something which to some people may be difficult. I just want to throw out certain things that were common in Jewish homes and Jewish communities. From time to time, people made a farbrengen in their homes. This is even mentioned in Hayom Yom, that the Rebbe says that Shalashudas, that Malkis used to have in the homes, and Shalashudas used to have in shul. That's not the point I'm making. The difference between Shalashudas and Malkis. The point which I'm making is that in one's home there should be a little gathering from time to time, a little farbrengen. This brings a certain inspiration. This brings the home to the point of say, oh, this is a chsidish home. This is a home that houses a farbrengen. And it gives a certain aura. It gives a certain respect for for what the home stands for. Yes.
I wanted to go back for a moment to the question on Bereshis. And I was gratified to see maybe that it wasn't just occurring because I was early on influenced by this parsha, that I was with one of the teachers that I was studying with, and he had said in a simplistic way, and I really need clarification on this because it had to do with I hesitate to use this word, but the mechanics of decision making, meaning that his explanation was, and hopefully I haven't distorted this, was that the man was responsible ultimately for, meaning that the woman would input as much as she wished and to her complete satisfaction in the decision-making process. I mean, I'm giving over not mine but his, and that at one point the man should accumulate all of that valuable information and take into consideration all of it and have in no way negate her contribution, meaning just for the sake of the fact that a man should say, I'm the decision maker, it doesn't matter what you say because ultimately the decision rests with me, but to actually accumulate all that data, evaluate it, and to be able to come to some reasonable, whether it could be that the wife in this case had the most idealized solution, so to speak, to this particular concern or issue. Could be at another moment the man was the one who actually found the right solution. And that But ultimately, it was the man who was responsible for making this decision so that the home would not be like two heads, so to speak. You know, that both heads could come together into one head, but it was the man who was responsible for saying, okay, this is the way we're going to go ultimately. Is this just simplistic and off the mark?
I don't know if I would put it simplistic and off the mark. I would say that this is not the light in which we are trying to approach the whole issue. There is inevitably going to be a moment where one would say, no, this is how we're going to do it. No, this is how we're going to do it. And there's going to be, chas v'sholom, some kind of a fallout, some kind of a fight. This is not, this exception, so to speak, this is not what I'm really attending to. I'm attending to the statement in the Torah, V'hu yimshul boch. I'm attending to the message that the Torah says that the Jewish home, the home is actually established on that basis, not just for decision making, or and to rule, but to set up home. And the reason I'm attending from that perspective is because it is my firm view, belief, that if this spirit is brought into the home, there is not going to be a problem with decision making. There's just not going to be any problem.
That means that to begin with, there is a definition of a role, and that's the husband's role to give the overview of things and how things are going to be laid out, and therefore there will be no role for the woman to really have a role of support, but not a role of necessarily roadmap.
No, not precisely.
I would like to be excused for my, blunt kind of.
That's fine. It's fine. It's very fine. I'd like to.
It's very. I'll give you some.
No. 1 second. I understand the question. I said to begin with that if what I said is not clear, I really would like to have this issue very clear. And I'm not talking in terms of the husband saying, laying out, this is how things are going to be put in place. Precisely not. How things are being put in place, as a matter of fact, is more often the wife's decision, the wife's job than the husband's. I'll give you an example. Just give you an illustration. The husband's job moves to Toronto. His job moves to Toronto, and they have to move to Toronto. Okay. So the husband made the big decision to move to Toronto. Is that a ruling? Is that he telling wife, this is how they're going to do it? His job moved to Toronto, and he has to provide for the occupant of the family.
What does her job move to Toronto?
1 second. And therefore, we have to move there. Okay. When we move there, where are we going to live? Oh, look around. Maybe you like this neighborhood, you like this street. It's fine with me, whatever you choose. Nothing to do with your husband. Which house would you like to live in? Make a choice. What furniture do you like? Make a choice. How do you want to set up the furniture? It's up to you, my dear. So who set up? Who made all the decisions in terms of layout? Nothing to do with the husband. There is a certain direction that has to come from the husband. This is the direction which doesn't define anything on the practical level almost, but it says direction. But we have to live here. This is the light. This is the point which I was trying to make. The husband has to provide a values, the sense of value. What is the spirit of the home? How to set it up? We have to have sforim. We have to have holy books in the house. Where are we going to put the bookcases? I don't know. Where would you like to put them? You follow what I'm saying? When this is brought into focus, is brought into life. As a matter of fact, it's important. The husband has to know that really where to put the bookcase, or which house to live in, or how to set up the furniture. Absolutely. If she asks him, do you have an idea? Of course he should provide, but yes, he should leave it up to her. It's her home. She's the Akeres Abayis. She takes care of the home. He shouldn't have any. There should be no dispute on that.
But again, we're back into a modern world where a woman is working and a woman is a provider and a woman is
right.
Less in this community. I don't know.
Right. I'll tell you. I discussed this briefly to whatever extent in the other sessions. The
where
various.
we live is fine. We live here, and what we do is this, and what we do is that.
If we have the proper perspective, there is going to be differences, especially, as I say, we live in the modern world. The woman has her background, the husband has his background, quite different. Ultimately, if we have the correct sense of value and the correct understanding what this is about, things fall into place quite normally, quite peacefully, without dispute and without difficulty whatsoever. I want to, as in closing, I would like to bring in a general perspective. The sessions we call Shalom Bayis. Shalom has, in the Torah, in Chassidus, has a very specific meaning, very narrow meaning. Shalom does not mean the absence of fighting. Shalom does not mean the absence of differences. Shalom does not mean peace in the common sense of the word, that I have my little territory, you have your little territory, and we respect each other's territory. Because if I have my territory and you have your territory, we have nothing to do with each other. Where is the shalom? Shalom means that we have two or multiple very different people, very different ideas, and somehow, and these ideas remain different, and these ideas so to speak, are encouraged to be what they are. And somehow they coexist. And they live in peace. Together. That's what's called Shalom. And Chassidus explains one very simple principle. Simple, insightful, very high principle, but it's very simply presented. The principle is, Shalom is possible only when there is a cognizance of a higher value. And this is what we're trying to bring out. If each one is living in his own skin, there is at best they're not going to they're going to live in a separate, not interfere with each other. Living together means that there is a higher quality, a higher value that brings them together. It's not my choice, it's not my doing, it's not your doing, it's something greater than both of us. That brings shalom, and with that in mind, with that spirit, everything can be made to fall into place very easily. With that said, we're concluding today's session.